Okay, so I think I'm going to get started. Big welcome to all the Oxford Brookes students joining me today. Thank you for choosing to watch this presentation. I hope you can take away some actionable tips and advice from the session, which will ultimately help you in your search for your placement year. So before I get into today's session on how to secure a great placement and make the most of it, I'll just go over a very quick agenda so we all know what to expect. So hopefully you guys can see my screen there and the agenda should be popping up. So firstly, I'll cover off what a great placement actually looks like. So you know what sort of things to look for when making a shortlist of the companies you want to apply for. I'll then take you through why you should definitely do a placement and go through the hard graft of getting one. And then to wrap up, I'll give you some top tips and advice on how to secure a great placement and get as much out of that experience as possible. So before we get stuck in with the content, just a quick introduction from me. My name's Jessica and I'm the head of marketing at ProspectSoft. I actually did my placement year back in 2014 at ProspectSoft and returned to the business after graduating from Sheffield Hallam University in 2016. So I've kind of been on the placement scheme myself. And a little bit about ProspectSoft. We're a UK-based small business. We're situated near Oxford, so that might appeal to lots of you. We have been at the Oxford Brookes Careers Fair many a time, actually, so it's nice to join it virtually and not miss out. And at ProspectSoft, we create, develop and deliver our customer relationship management system, which is called Prospect CRM, to more than 5,000 SME users worldwide. So that's just a brief introduction to me and what we do. And so when you're searching for a placement, how are you actually going to know what a great placement looks like? Because there's actually so much choice when it comes to applying for a placement. You know, there's so many companies you could apply to. So it's about being smart with your time, and instead of just blasting out loads of applications to everything and anything, first considering, okay, what does a great placement mean to me? What does that look like to me? So that, you know, if you do get the job, you do truly enjoy that experience and ultimately get something valuable from it, because that's the end goal of the whole thing. So what does a great placement look like at a small business? Well, as far as I'm concerned, a great placement is one at ProspectSoft. And on screen now, you'll see some of the real opportunities that we offer in our scheme, and these suit students with a whole range of skill sets and competencies. So hopefully there's a few on that screen there that you're thinking, oh, yeah, that looks of interest. I want to, you know, look at that job description a little bit more. We've actually taken on several Oxford Brookes students over the years as well. I think we had placement not last year, but the year before. He was from Oxford Brookes and he did the new business sales placement. So we do take placements quite regularly from Oxford Brookes, which is nice. And so just a bit about these roles. So the two on the left there, the technical roles, they're perfect for those who have a strong technical talent, typically studying an IT related degree like computer science. So even if that isn't you and you're studying something more business related, if you do know anyone who is interested in that kind of thing, just let them know that that's something we do. And I suppose you'd like to know if your friends were kind of recommending ones to you. So recommend that to a friend if they're doing kind of a computer science degree. The three commercial roles on the right there are in new business sales. So that is obviously dealing with prospective clients, demoing our software to them, kind of encouraging customers to take free trials, kind of lead generation, lead management, and there is commission involved with that role. I'll touch on that a bit later. Customer success is great if you've got some real experience, some customer-focused, customer-facing experience in your work experience. That would be a great role for you. That involves dealing with our existing clients and actually onboarding them so that they successfully adopt the CRM software and kind of using it to their advantage and helping them with the usage of it. And then of course the marketing role, which is undoubtedly our most popular role. We definitely get plenty of applications for that one. So that's just a very brief overview of the roles there. And just to give you an idea, each year we receive about 400 applications just for those commercial roles on the right, and we offer about 4 jobs. in those in total, and then we have about 200 applications on average for the technical roles. So we're looking at about 600 applications for between 10 and 15 positions, which is particularly competitive for an SME. And I think when I went for a placement at ProspectSoft, I thought, oh, I hadn't really heard of it. I wonder how many people will be here on this assessment centre and things like that. Actually, the calibre of students was quite amazing, really. It was definitely a competitive role to get. So about 600 applications, which is quite a significant amount. And what I'm going to run through for the rest of the presentation is something that you can either take in a generic way or compare to other placements to judge. So what I'm going to run through are the sorts of things that we do at ProspectSoft, and then hopefully you can find that useful and take as a benchmark or a comparison for wherever else you're looking as well. So just to make it a bit more interesting, I thought I'd tell you about us with some facts and figures, just because they're pretty impressive actually when you compare these to other small businesses. So the first one is that we've taken on over 170 placements since the scheme began in 2003, which is pretty incredible. We're a small business, as I said. We've only got about 30 permanent members of staff. So back in the day in 2003, there was probably only a few members of staff, and they were taking on placements right back then, which I think is pretty incredible. The second one there I'll come back to on the next slide, which is that 4 returning placements are now in senior management positions. And I think that demonstrates how keen the directors are not to just take placements back, but to actually retain them by progressing them up the company. The third one there on the slide is that placements are our main source of recruitment. We rarely recruit externally, so we see the scheme as pretty much critical to the success of the business. It's just what makes our business run. So that is quite unique. The next one is so impressive that I had to actually check it was true. So all but 2 of our software developers are ex-placements, which is pretty astonishing when you think that, the thing we sell is primarily coded by placements and returning placements. I think that's incredible. And we have over 5,000 people using our CRM, like I mentioned earlier. So about 20 members of staff in the development team in total, by the way. The next one there is that just over 65% of our whole workforce is made up of current and past placements, which is really great. It means that everyone in the company kind of feels like they've been in your shoes. Even those that haven't actually done a placement, they're so used to the placement scheme, it's just like part of the company. And that's quite unheard of, that particular weighting, I'd say. We're also really proud to retain over 50% of our placements year on year. So we offer permanent positions where possible, which means we're kind of growing the team all the time. And the final stat there is that the average length of service of an employee is an impressive 7.5 years. So people want to stay with us, which I think is always a good sign. And actually, this is even more impressive when you take into consideration that our team is largely made up of young people. So, younger people typically want to use their first job kind of as a stepping stone, totally fine, and then they move on to a new role quite quickly. So I think that length of service is quite encouraging. So these are the sorts of things that you might want to look at in companies you're applying for yourselves. Do they take placements back? Does that mean something to you? What is the average length of service? Do people kind of go really quickly? Does that say something about the company? Pick up on these things and think, do they mean something to you? And are they important to you? Because at the end of the day, as I said, there are so many companies you could apply for, and you hear of your peers applying to like 30, 40, 50 placements. And it's actually not necessary if you personalize your application and you actually look at the things that are important to you, and you can draw on those things in your application. So as I mentioned on the previous slide, 4 of us are now in senior management positions. The reason I wanted to mention that is not to like brag about it, but just to say, these people cover pretty much all functional areas of the business, apart from finance, admittedly, and HR. We don't do placements in those 2 areas. But that's incredible to think that previous placements are running key functional areas of the business. I think that's astonishing. And actually, we had 2 directors who were previous placements as well. Our development director, who only just very recently left us for a new role at Facebook, he was with us for 14 years. And then our operations director, he was with us for, I think, 20 years plus. And he was actually one of our first placement students and became the operations director. And he's only just recently moved on. So I think it's just pretty cool to know that, you know, they're giving responsibility to previous placements and they're kind of progressing people up the company. And I think it's fair to say that we operate like a very close-knit group of friends rather than employees and placements, and we're separate. You know, we're quite a young company, so we do a lot of things together. And I think that's a really important part of our culture, to be honest. And I suppose that's made the kind of working from home thing a bit tough for us, just because we like a good get together and supporting each other. But, you know, depending on what you're looking for in a placement, then culture or different types of culture may not be important to you, but we feel it's what makes our placement great. So think about the culture, you know, that is a massive part of your placement. If you're going to be somewhere for a year, you know, thinking about what's their culture like is important, because you're going to be working there 9 to 5, Monday to Friday at least. So definitely bear that in mind. So for us, every Friday we hold a beer Friday, but well, at the moment it's virtually. So at the end of the day on a Friday, we just have a bit of a chat on Microsoft Teams and grab a drink. Every year, it's a bit of a tradition now, actually, we go to Henley Royal Regatta. Some of you might actually know what that is because you're near Oxford, but other students up north didn't seem to know what that was. So that's like a boat racing thing, if you weren't aware. And we have our summer party there. So we just kind of socialise at that. We've got Christmas parties that we do. We also organise loads of departmental stuff as well, like crazy golf, curry nights, rock climbing, trampolining, kind of whatever the placements are into, we'll just kind of put those things in pretty much. And I think by looking at these photos, you probably think we don't do much work, but we actually do. But it's just that we like to have fun as well. And our culture is really special. And I'd say it's actually has a very sort of strong family feel. A lot of students pick up on that in their application, which is really interesting when you think, you know, you're not even at the company yet, and you can really feel a strong sense of belonging and that kind of family feel. And I think that's quite interesting, actually. So think about the company culture when drawing up your shortlist of companies to apply for. What kind of culture appeals to you? And I know I've just gone on about, you know, how great our scheme is, but it's definitely not just me making it up. It's statistically proven as well. Our scheme has actually won the top small to medium-sized employer award more times than any other small business in the UK. Something we're quite proud of. We splash it all over our website now. And I do think that knowing that a company has won awards for its placement programme shows that it's pretty good. And that might be something you feel you want to use as a benchmark in your research. You know, has the company won awards for employability, for example, or has it got any awards at all? I don't know, it's just a particular element you might want to pick up on and think about. And it's not just us or the judges of that award that think the scheme's great. Our placements actually think it's really good. So on the Rate My Placement website, I'm sure you're all familiar with Rate My Placement, students can write up accounts of their time on placement and provide a star rating on basically all aspects of the scheme, right from the training that the employer provided across to sort of the social life and everything in between. So then it means that the students that are applying, like you guys right now, you can go and look at those reviews and you get a feel for what to expect. We've got over 100 reviews, which is quite a lot for a small business, and our average rating is very high compared to others. I mean, you can go and look at them and you'll see, not just actually small businesses, but the bigger businesses as well. We perform pretty well actually on at 8.6 is our average. So that's just another piece of advice from me would be, you know, use these reviews as a way of guiding you to answering that question, you know, is this placement great or not? Because, you know, likelihood is if a company has great reviews on the RMP platform, it probably is a great placement because, you know, they're student reviews, they're completely impartial, they're written by people just like you. So definitely check those out and just have a really quick scan because they could tell you a lot about the company, because, you know, a company can say it's really good and, you know, it might take hundreds of placements every year, but actually people's experiences might not actually add up to what they say on their website. So definitely have a look at those. Something I heard a lot when I was searching for my placement, and I know it's something students still say, is, oh, I haven't heard of that company, so I probably wouldn't apply. Or, you know, oh, I know IBM, yeah, I know that name, or I haven't heard of them. You know, you'll go to the careers fair. I know it's virtual this time, but you'll go to a careers fair and you'll just sort of go over to all the stands that you know the names of. But having heard of them is actually completely irrelevant. And I'm going to just demonstrate how nonsense a statement that is with this example, which is Twilio. Now, you may or may not have heard of Twilio before. Likelihood is you probably haven't, which is fine. I hadn't until like a year ago. But Twilio is a cloud communications platform as a service company based in the US, and they're currently worth about $45 billion. $45 billion they're worth. Now, I don't know if they do placements, but if they did, can guarantee they'd probably be pretty good. You know, they're a go-ahead company. They're on the leading edge of technology, much like ProspectSoft, I like to think, obviously on a much, much bigger scale than us. But their customers include the likes of Marks and Spencer's. M&S use them for all their call centres. And although you won't have bought from Twilio directly, which is why you're probably not familiar with them, I can guarantee you've used it. So Uber and Deliveroo, for example, both rely completely on Twilio technology for their apps. So if you've ever used Uber or Deliveroo, you've used Twilio. And if you haven't heard of a company like Twilio, you're unlikely to have heard of any of our customers either. So I think in essence, that is just the nature of business to business selling. You just don't hear of these companies. You know, so on the slide now, these are some of our customers. You may recognize one at best, possibly none. That's totally fine, by the way. But the same principle applies, which is the things you will have bought as an end user, the company you bought it from will have probably bought it from someone else. That's just the way the world works a lot of the time. So I'm going to pick out a few just to really kind of make this point here. So Calderdale Carpets in the top right-hand corner. If you've ever been into like a hotel, which I suspect most of you have, they make the special carpets for hotels with their logos woven into them. If you've been in a bathroom in a hotel or in a business setting and there's an extractor fan, you'll probably see the Airflow logo on there. So that's the bottom right-hand corner. You might have actually heard of Airflow. They're a bit more recognisable. CD UK, sort of middle right, they supply to pretty much every single kitchen company in the UK because they're the exclusive distributor for one of the best worktop materials, which is called Corian. I know there's granite, which is a very nice worktop material, but Corian is also like kind of one of the best materials. So they supply to pretty much most kitchens in the UK. So, you know, hopefully you're getting the idea here. To secure a great placement, you need to actually open up your mind to companies you may not have heard of, you know, those that sell business to business and also those smaller organizations as well. You know, just because you've not heard of it, it doesn't mean they're no good and you shouldn't do a placement with them. And actually this misconception is very much the case with bigger companies, not just small businesses. You know, Twilio is absolutely huge, but if you saw their name on paper and you saw Microsoft, you'd probably just click on Microsoft or go to Microsoft's careers fair or whatever, because you've heard of them. But hopefully that point has kind of just shown you, you know, the importance of not kind of discounting companies that you haven't heard of. So now we know what a great placement looks like and those signs to look out for when sort of searching for one, those key things to consider, like, you know, look at the reviews. Have they got any awards? Do I care about their culture? Okay, haven't heard of them before, but that's fine. You know, those sorts of things. Why should you persevere and definitely do a placement? Because it's quite taxing. You know, it does involve effort, and that is alongside your studies. And I can appreciate that that is a lot to juggle. But in actual fact, you're almost lucky that you're completing your second year now and that you're entering the placement market next year, hopefully as COVID is tailing off, fingers crossed, because the job market now is probably the most difficult it's been like in living memory. So actually, perhaps like a quirk of fate of when you were born and when you started uni, you probably timed it as best you can. And so by having a year of industrial experience under your belt, hopefully by the time you graduate, things will obviously be back to normal largely, and you'll be in a growing job market again. So timing has worked kind of in your favour, is kind of the point. So you should definitely persevere and get one. Okay, so we know what a great placement looks like. We know we're definitely going to do everything in our power to get one. But what about how to get those offers coming in thick and fast and kind of making the most of the job when you do get it? Because that's the whole point of this exercise, getting the placement. And something I've been asked more frequently now by students is, how do I actually stand out from the crowd and get noticed? And, you know, it's a big crowd that you're in, I'm afraid. You know, back in the day, in our parents' generation, going to uni was really rare. You know, maybe one of your parents or both your parents have been, but you know, it's actually quite a rare thing to happen. In fact, you know, both of our directors are the two owners of our business at ProspectSoft. Neither of them graduated, and that in the IT industry these days would be very unusual. But because, you know, they're from a previous generation, it was just the norm. Whereas now, any new startup, software as a service or SaaS company, which is what we are, a SaaS company, would probably be started by a graduate. And, you know, as you can see, despite the fact that the two owners don't have one, over 65% of the business, that stat I said earlier, they definitely do have one because they're returning or current placements. So nowadays, going to uni has like rapidly become the most popular route. And I think it's about 40%, 40% of school leavers, so people aged 18, choose to go to uni now. And that's compared with about 14% in like the 1980s when our parents would have gone. But kind of the unfortunate upshot of that is that everyone in your cohort, like your peers, your friends, you know, everybody who's around you, they're actually automatically on like a level playing field with you. And obviously you're unique as a person, but on paper, you know, lots of the things you've done, well, I did my GCSEs, did DV, bronze, did A levels, did university, got a job, and they're kind of like the same thing as the rest of your cohort, which feels like really annoying actually, because it's like, I did all that stuff and I feel really proud of that. And it is amazing, but you're kind of on that level playing field. And so, okay, we need to stand out from the crowd, but where do we do that? How do we do that? So the first way, I guess, or the first place to stand out is on your CV, because that's typically what employers will see first, is your CV and your cover letter. But putting on your CV very generic statements like these ones that are coming up on the slide, they just won't cut it. If anything, that's the crowd. And everyone thinks that these sorts of things are like really good to put on a CV, but they're not. They're not that important. You know, maybe on the CV somewhere you can put these sorts of things, but express them differently to how we've got on here. So don't just say, I work well in a team. Just give a good example of where you've worked well in a team, and we can infer that from the example. You know, when you think about it, it's so blatantly obvious, but when you're doing a CV or an application, you think, I'll write that down because that's what they said to, you know, that sounds good. But actually just give an example, like, you know, when you've been in a sport and it's like been a team sport, and then we can infer the fact that, you know, you're a good team player from that example. You don't need to blatantly say it like that. So they're very generic. Another thing I'd say not to do is, so for example, on our job descriptions, we have a bit at the bottom that says what you'll need, and it says, you know, good attention to detail, positive attitude, things like that. And people just literally lift those out of the job description and they plonk them onto their cover letter and think that that's good personalization, and that isn't. That's really not. So we know that those sorts of generic statements aren't going to cut it. So what is going to get the attention of the employer? For us, the thing that sets you apart from the crowd is the extracurricular things that you're doing now, not the things that you did like 10 years ago. So we like to know which students have, to put it bluntly, gone off their backside and actually done something other than school, other than uni, that involved you getting up in the morning or middle of the night or just at a normal time is fine, and taking part in something you didn't have to do. So essentially something that's taken some real effort, energy, enthusiasm, some drive to do that wasn't mandatory or given to you on a plate. Because, getting top exam results is great. We want intelligent people to join our program, but universities and schools do tend to push you, whether you realise it or not, and we want someone that can push themselves in something else, because that tells us so much more about that person. So what are some examples, you might be asking? Hopefully you're starting to think now of some things that you're doing or that you could get involved in and put on your CV. But there's nothing in particular that you should go and do, but some previous candidates who have been successful in securing a placement, they've done things like doing a sport, rowing, running, tennis, hockey, netball, they're playing for their team at uni, and cricket or whatever it might be, playing outside of university, but just alongside their studies. Volunteering is really good as well. We've had some great examples of students volunteering for charities local to them, where they've had to take time out of their evenings or their weekends to help. Music's a great one. So whether it be playing an instrument to a high standard or being part of a larger music group, like a choir or a band or something like that. Some have even started their own businesses. Just a quick note, if you sell things on eBay, that isn't really starting your own business particularly. We had an application who said that he's been selling some things on eBay. Wouldn't really class that as owning your own business, but I suppose it's a bit entrepreneurial. Or if you've helped another business, like maybe one of your parents works in a school and you've done some of their social media or some of their website management, or a gift shop in your town and you've done some of their website management and social media. I'm just picking up on examples that we've had before. It doesn't need to be like, oh, I've set up a whole business, I've got loads of stores or anything like that. We're just saying something where you're doing something extra you didn't have to do, basically. Certifications, that's a good one. So students have furthered their knowledge in certifications that weren't set by the uni. Bear in mind, this is just what our take on what we look for, but I'm sure lots of employers would agree on this perspective. Other employers, particularly larger kind of corporates, they probably feel that passing lots of competency tests are more critical than that. But for us, we want to learn about the person as a human, because our culture is so important to the business, like I said earlier. So something you didn't have to do that just shows you're capable of having that initiative to go and do it at a reasonably high level. So I also just wanted to quickly run through the key things we look for on a CV and a cover letter, which will help you stand out. The first one isn't really a standout point though, actually, to be fair. The first one is getting the basics right. We're talking spelling, grammar, addressing it to the right company would be great. We've had a lot of people doing that incorrectly. So, easily avoidable mistakes, just get your career service or a friend or your parent or somebody to just read through it, your CV, your cover letter, get that second pair of eyes to look over it and just thoroughly look through it. Because particularly if you're applying for a marketing role, grammar, spelling, they're things that, we get applications where they get it right and we get lots that get it wrong. And when it comes down to, choosing, those that get it completely right are going to get through. So it is a bit kind of one of those things that you just got to get right, I guess. Personalization. So this goes for both on the CV, but of course the cover letter, because the cover letter is your chance to explain why you want to work for our company specifically and the particular role you're applying for. So try to pick out literally just a few, literally 3 genuinely unique or specific reasons as to why you want to work for that company, rather than kind of providing a generic statement that could just be lifted, copied and pasted onto any old cover letter. Because what we get quite a lot actually at the moment is students thinking that, insert company name here is enough, which is not. And we get them sort of providing a statement that sort of sounds personalized, but actually you could apply it to any business. So it's like something along the lines of, oh, ProspectSoft are, very, very good. They're standing out against their competitors. They have a great culture and they're doing financially very well. That is just a flattering statement that could be lifted and applied to anyone, because any business is going to think, oh yeah, that's us. We're doing very well. We've got a great culture. Instead of just saying, oh, they've got a great culture, pick on the points that I mentioned earlier. For example, they're all on our website, on our placement website, front and center. It's not actually that hard to find that information. Just those very genuinely unique reasons and specific reasons why you want to work for that company. Just a few will do it. It's not like you have to spend hours and hours. Just a few on the cover letter, because when you think about it, what is the point in a cover letter if you don't personalize it? Because a lot of the time people just put, I'd like to apply for ProspectSoft, and then they sort of reiterate a load of stuff on their CV and they go, please consider me, thanks, name. But when you think about it, what is the point in that? Might as well just send the cover letter and send the CV on its own with no cover letter. Because what you have to bear in mind is, we're offering about 10 placements a year for those roles, and we receive about 500 or 600 applications. So when I say it needs to stand out, it's because of that. And think of the likes of Microsoft and Disney, and I'm sure some of you have applied for really big companies already or thinking about it. They probably receive thousands of applications. And, you might be sitting there thinking, oh, it's a real pain to personalize every CV and cover letter. But in actual fact, I think I applied for about 7 placements in total, which is quite low on average, I think, compared to some of my peers who are applying for like 40, 50. And it's just, you don't actually have to do it if you just make them really good quality and apply, with that personalization from the outset. So think about what traits and talents you have that are relevant to the company and emphasize on those. Draw on those extracurricular activities. We mentioned that on the previous slide, because that's you sort of standing out from the crowd. Be very careful with your wording. If you believe you're particularly good at something, then feel free to list it as a skill. That's great. But saying you're an expert at it might be a bit risky if you're not really sure you're a full expert. So we've had things like my time at university has made me an expert in JavaScript, which is a particular technical language. Chances are you're putting yourself right out there to be quizzed on that in the telephone interview, which may be something you want to avoid if you don't really truly feel you're an expert. And instead of impressing the reader, it can actually just have the opposite effect, because it just tells the reader that you're underestimating the amount there's actually to learn about that particular thing. And it indicates that your estimation of your abilities isn't very good either. So only say you're an expert if you truly are an expert, is my bit of advice on that. Another bit of advice is, although the online templates that are out there are a great way to help you design a well-structured CV, try to steer clear of those really garish designs, particularly if you're applying for a creative role like marketing. I suppose what is garish, it's a bit subjective. You could think a bright yellow looks great. I could think it looks really garish. So I suppose it's a bit subjective. But, sometimes those fancy graphics and bright colours can really detract from the content of your CV. And also, on that note, be very careful about showing your skills graphically. So by that, I mean using charts and graphs to show how good you are at something. Because most of the time, they don't tell the recruiter anything, really. They look quite nice, but there's no context of scale. So what I'm talking about is, let's say you put marketing or HTML, and then you have a progress bar and you fill it like halfway or 80% of the way. Hopefully you're kind of understanding what I mean by that. Because, let's just take an example of that. Let's say you have a full, half full progress bar. So it's half the way along, and it's for HTML. So you put HTML and you've got it about 50% of the way there. That could mean, you have some proficiency, but you feel you've got the capacity to learn some more in it. Or it could mean that your skills are lacking and you feel you're in need of improvement. Or it could actually mean, oh, I've been using HTML for years now, and I actually think I'm better than half the other developers on a global scale. I mean, that is a bit of an exaggeration, to be fair, but you can see that that is massively up for interpretation. So try to be as clear as possible. Those kind of progress bars, I'm not a massive fan of particularly. So just think about that. And then also make sure you include your hobbies and interests. At ProspectSoft, we want to know like about you as the person. So if you like cooking or reading, put that on there, because like obviously it's an application for something like it's a serious setting, you're trying to get a job, but at the same time, we want to know what you're like as a person. So definitely put that on there. It helps us form a better picture of you. So these are the sorts of things that recruiters could make a snap decision on literally in seconds. So definitely bear them in mind. Another kind of question I get a lot is, what's it like working for a small business on a placement year? The main thing about working for an SME is that, if it's anything like our SME, you get real responsibility and a real opportunity to make a difference in that business if you want to. It's not that, SMEs are better than large corporates at that, but just by their very nature, SMEs have to be dynamic and adapt very quickly. So, yes, a placement student in a larger organization might come up with a great idea and it may well come to fruition, but depending on the timescale of that project, they might actually not see the results of it. Whereas at a small business, when you're on your placement, you could pretty much walk up to the decision maker of the whole business, and if it's a great idea, they may well act on it in a short frame of time, and because it's a small business, you'll see the results of it. So working for a small business is a really great way to see a business working from top to bottom, I guess, and it will kind of give you the most complete experience in terms of understanding what it's like to work in a business, because you're seeing the whole thing. Okay, so I just want to move on to kind of, let's say you've secured the placement now, and it's about getting as much from that experience as you can. So set yourself some goals. I know it's kind of something that I feel like uni say a lot, like set your goals, SMART goals and all of that. But it is good to have a few goals and objectives set so that you're aiming towards something on your placement year. And I kind of think putting them into short, medium and long term is a good way of doing it, just to break them up. And I think that will largely, your appraisal will kind of cover that as well. So, see when you do get your placement, see if your careers office can help you, with creating some goals in advance of your placement. You've already got the placement in the bag. Let's just, really perfect it before you even start. Reading blogs and kind of website content, as well as watching, training videos, can really help you understand the business's target market much better. And that will massively benefit you before you start a placement year, because you have a better grasp of who they're targeting, and their ideal customer profile, their ICP. If you're doing a marketing degree, you might have heard of that, and the buyer persona as well. You might have heard of that. You'll understand their needs as well. So definitely take a look at that, particularly if you're looking for a marketing role. You can look at the blogs, and if you're kind of looking to do like a customer success role, definitely look at the training videos they've got and things like that. You've also got access to experienced employees on your placement, so make sure you're using their knowledge by asking plenty of questions, but then listen to what they say. And I truly mean like actually listen. No matter if it's your supervisor, your directors, your peers, the customer that you're dealing with, and take any feedback on positively and internalize what people are actually saying to you. And that listening thing is so important. Generally speaking, we've had amazing placements. We've had one or two, one in particular sticking out in my mind, where that person, you sort of talk to them and you'd be showing them something and they'd just be sort of looking around the room, not really listening. And you sort of think, are you actually listening? You're going to be doing this, so you probably need to watch carefully. So I definitely think look actually interested as well, even though, you know, it's a long week at work, try and actually look engaged, and it kind of just comes across in your body language is what I'm trying to say. Say yes to opportunities, because your placement is all about gaining experience. So say yes to any opportunity you can to build your experience. So like, we've had some great placements who've just finished with us, and they were so, you know, keen to just say yes, and they've managed to do so much more on their placement than I kind of expected that they would. And it's just meant that they're just more employable. If anything, you know, it's meant that they've been exposed to more. We're taking back loads of placements from the year just gone because they've been so good. So say yes to opportunities is just that point there. If you have an idea, chances are the employer will appreciate that. So, you know, at ProspectSoft, we love hearing new ideas because that shows that you're enthusiastic about making a difference. So try and share your ideas as much as possible. And then, of course, enjoy the placement, because, you know, it's a chance to have fun, it makes some really good friendships. I mean, I know at ProspectSoft, they tend to, if they're sort of living different parts of the country, they'll get a house together, a bit like you would at uni, get a house together. They make really good friendships sort of for life. And you're learning those valuable skills for your future career. So it's a great opportunity. So make sure you really enjoy it. So there's a little bit of time for questions at the end if anyone has any, so just pop them in the question box. I've had a couple come through, so I will answer those just after this slide. But if you are interested in our scheme particularly, hopefully that's given you some food for thought. You can go to our placement site. So we have a whole sort of dedicated placement website. You should find everything on there that you'll need for your application. You shouldn't need to go to our corporate website. So everything should be on there for you. And if you want to get in touch, you can do so via our careers email address, which is on the screen there, or you can message me on LinkedIn. That's absolutely fine. And I just want to go over these couple of questions that have popped in. So somebody has asked me about the company perks. So what are the perks like? So depending on which team you're in, we offer a variety of kind of like financial perks. So if you're in the new business sales team, for example, you can earn quite a significant commission. If you're in a technical role, for example, we pay bonuses based on net promoter scores, which is essentially the like customer ratings. So there are a variety of financial perks, I guess, over and above the package that we offer. And then sort of up until COVID, really, we were offering some travel and customer visit perks. And we were due to expand that for international travel to sort of particularly to Australasia. But our intention is to do that when we can. Not so much a perk now, I guess, but we do offer the opportunity to work from home, which I think is a perk if you're on a placement. And we offer a flexi time policy because of our international working hours, which can be quite beneficial. So that's typically only the new business sales placements, because you might be doing demonstrations to people who are based in Australia, for example. You know, that's the main team that really has the flexi time offered to them. But I say that the biggest perks of ProspectSoft are definitely from a social aspect. You know, I already mentioned some of those earlier in the presentation, but for those that sort of join me a bit later, these are sort of departmental meals out, Christmas event that's paid for, summer barbecue event that we do that's paid for, obviously the Henley Regatta thing that's paid for, and also the opportunity to organise your own events. So this year, the placements and some of the permanent members of staff formed a little golf society, but it all depends on, you know, what interests you have, and then the social budget for each department can be used on that. Next question was about applications, when they open and when they close. So we opened our applications as of the 5th of October. So we've been open a couple of weeks now. We've already had, I was saying about that marketing job, we've had already 100 applications, I think, for that role, which is quite astonishing. So definitely get your application in. Somebody also asked just about application opening. When's a good time to apply? You're not going to be like penalised for applying early or applying late, it doesn't matter to us. Just get the application in, basically, but just make sure you're reading it really thoroughly and kind of personalising it and using all those points that I mentioned earlier. We close on the 5th of February for the person that's asked that question, so it is a bit of a way off. So yeah, it does come around very quickly. You know, Christmas will be upon us before we know it, and then it's like the other side of Christmas pretty much, and you know, early February. So that's for all our roles that we close on the 5th of Feb. And then just one other question, feel free to pop any more in if you've got them, guys, that's great. So somebody said, what sets you apart from your competitors? In terms of what we do, we operate in a niche, which means we basically own it, actually. We don't really have any competitors in that space. But in terms of our placement, definitely the culture and the weight of our awards, you know, the awards that we won, I think that says a lot about where we sit in terms of the competition. I think we've won the top SME award 8 times now, so pretty impressive. So they're all the questions I've got right this second. Feel free to drop me a message after this, and that's absolutely fine. But thanks for those that did put any questions in, and thank you for joining me today. I hope you've taken something from the session, and I wish you the very best of luck in your search for a great placement. Take care.